This is an FRG ministry production with the support of our ministry partners and donors.
This is a tough one. Let's talk about the first part of the gospel, because the second part is probably the easier part for me to preach about, because where two or more are gathered in my name, I will give it to you. It's nice, it's pleasant, it's beautiful, it's true. But also the first part is true, where we have to reprimand our brother and our sister. Ouch! None of us like to do that. None of us like to be the judges of others. Well, I suppose some like to be judgmental towards others, but the reality is that sometimes it is really difficult to point out the sin in the room. And when people point out things to us, it is really difficult too. But the thing is, we need to point out the sin in others, not to the point where we put them down and bring about condemnation, but to the point where we point them to the mercy and the conviction of Jesus. Now, I'm going to give you a case scenario. A case scenario in not that you go to your parish and there's a lady who's singing too loud, or a person you know is living in adultery and is still going to communion. These are moments, yes, you can point out one-on-one, but I want to talk about something maybe more real to many of us. Parents, grandparents, your children. And very often we look at our children and we let things go. Things that are happening in the life of our children, our children not going to Mass, our children maybe not following the faith, maybe doing things that we let go a lot of things. And many of us, especially I speak to parents and grandparents, find it difficult to point things out because they don't want to be the enemy of their teenager. Who wants to be the enemy of your child or grandchild? But the thing is, if you don't tell them, who will? If you don't point out to them where they're burning, where they're moving away from peace and love, who will? When they go to heaven, the gates of heaven, and they're not let in, God is merciful. We choose whether to go into heaven or not, and they're crying at the gate, wanting to get in, and they cannot because of their life of sin and their life of rebellion. They'll be crying and saying, why didn't my mom, why didn't my dad, why didn't my grandma, my grandpa say something? Maybe I wouldn't have listened then, but later on I would have listened. There was no voice of truth in my life. Now, this is an extreme situation, but it is so true. During my moments when my grandparents stood in front of me and told me I was doing something wrong, I slammed the door, walked away. But when I was able to reflect, when I was cornered against the wall, when I was backed up and I had nowhere to turn, these words returned to my heart, returned to my mind. And they were words that changed my life. They were words that brought me back to truth. Because my parents, my grandparents had the courage to speak out. Here's a request to parents and godparents. Speak truth. Speak truth with love. But speak truth to your children. Don't let them go by without knowing the difference between what is of God's heart and what is not. Even if it's the difference between what is good and what is great, rather than what is good and bad, speak to them about these things, because at the end of the day, they're going to listen. They might not listen straight away, but they will listen. They will listen to the words of their parents. They will listen to the words of grandma, grandpa, maybe not straight away. But sow seeds, speak truth, and this will change lives. You never know. You might be the reason of them getting into those gates of heaven, getting into a life of eternity, as opposed to being locked out. We need God's mercy, but God's mercy works through your words of truth.
This production is only made possible because of the generous support of FRG Ministry partners and donors. Please go to frgministry.com/donate to make a donation.